the wind and managing, whether it's an ebb tide or a flood tide, and whether it's wind against wave and the direction of the wind. So there's certainly things that we have we will be managing. We will have many tools at our hands in terms of the big rig and the little rig, which sort of takes me back to my skiff days, that we'll be able to manage, I think, to be able to sail in pretty much any conditions that San Francisco can offer up to us.
Mr. Ellison, there's a report out today that you might buy the NBA Hornets and move them to San Jose. I know you have a lot on your plate. Are you thinking about that?
To the best of my knowledge, the Hornets are owned by the NBA. George Shinn sold the Hornets to the NBA. It is, in fact, they outbid, the NBA outbid me for the team.
Forbes is reporting that you're willing to pay $450 million to the NBA and the Hornets to get the team to San Jose.
Not true. I did offer $350 million for the Hornets, and I think it was slightly outbid by the NBA.
Mr. Newsom and Mr. Ellison, Janet Katsuyama with KTVU back here on the media stand. David Chu, this Board of Supervisors, had alluded to the tough negotiations that it took to bring this to San Francisco, and I'm curious about some of the last-minute concessions that made this possible, specifically the relinquishment of waterfront property to be sold or transferred over versus leased, and the amount of money that you're going to be investing in San Francisco.
If I can just go first on this, I mean, there's been a lot written about this, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what really happened. When the city altered the proposal, and perfectly reasonable, that we were going to move from one set of piers to another set of piers, we then had to go out and do an engineering assessment of the new location. And it happened, close enough to our deadline. We had made public commitments that we had to pick a location by the end of last year, the last day of last year. And given the new location, we had done a thorough assessment of the first set of piers. When we got the northern location, we had to do an engineering assessment of the new location to see if, in fact, we could build a sailing village and get that sailing village done by 2013. That took some time. As a fallback, if we thought we couldn't do that, then we would have to go to a city where the sailing facilities were already in place, like Newport. That was really the attraction of Newport. As a backup, if we couldn't build the sailing village in the new location, we were going to go to Newport. That's what it was about.
Mr. Ellison?
I'm happy to have someone ask another question, but let me just say, maybe I'm just a little bit of an old hand in some respects, because I've been around dealing with labor negotiations for the last 7 years as mayor. I didn't think anything was particularly surprising about these negotiations. It's understandable, as I said out front, that the team is going to be investing hundreds of millions of dollars overall in this, not just investments, hard money in piers and the like, and they're bringing something extraordinary to the city, that they're going to want to make sure there's some certainty in the process. And Mr. Ellison just referred to the fact, and I referred to it prior, that there's a little less certainty when it comes to venues because we got to build them, unlike some of these other places where those venues are already built. And so we had to work through, to your question, we had to work through some of those finer points in those last few weeks. And at the end of the day, what was remarkable to me is people of good faith didn't disagree. We agreed on a process and a commitment, and we got to where we needed to go within the spirit of the legislation that the Board of Supervisors supported unanimously. And so I was quite pleased with that process and quite pleased certainly with the outcome. And I think it was a very advantageous process at the end of the day for both sides. We have more clarity on their needs, and I think they have more clarity on what we need to do to process this as well.
Again, from our point of view, we always wanted to come to San Francisco, but we had to have a high degree of confidence that, in fact, we could get the sailing village finished by 2013. That was the critical factor, that we had enough information in terms of engineering. We know we have to go through a secret process, which will take a year. We hope not longer. But our concern was we didn't know as much about the northern location as the location near AT&T Ballpark. We had to do the engineering assessments, and it came up positively. So we're very confident, unless something, very surprising and unanticipated comes up, that we'll be able to get the village built in time and have a great event in 2013.
And if I may, let me underscore this. The issue of confidence has been expressed. When the board sends a message of unanimity, of support, when you have environmental organizations, neighborhood groups, community groups, one of the benefits of this very public process is that when you come out the other end with more support than when you began, it gives you a degree of certainty that you otherwise would not have received had we just sprung certain things out the last minute. So again, the CEQA process will begin in earnest. There's no guarantees with CEQA, but we're about as close to having some certainty in the CEQA process because of the support and the work that we did very publicly in the last 6 months as any CEQA process I've ever been involved in.
And just for clarification, the lease versus ownership.
Well, it's an issue of fee simple on Seawall Lot 330, and we're going to work to our best of our abilities to provide that. And we think that's within, again, the spirit of what the board provided us, and we believe very confidently we'll get that approved through the state agencies. And we think it was a very important thing for the event authority and very advantageous from the city's perspective.
Mr. Ellison, John Upton, Bay Citizen.